All right, you guys, welcome tonight. We are going to sit down and talk with Nacho Rocha. If you'll remember, we spoke with him last week and heard his story. So let me give you a little reminder here. Nacho Rocha is a 61-year-old Cuban man. Well, he's Spanish, but he's has ties in Cuba, family in Cuba. He spent a lot of time living in Cuba. And 25 days ago, he left Saratoga, Florida, and made his way up to New York, where he positioned himself in front of the UN building in New York City. He said that he had been holding flags and signs and petitioning for humanitarian relief to be brought to Cuba and wasn't getting results. So he felt, in our last interview, he said that he felt called to do something that was more extreme. And for him, this was the right decision. He's a 61-year-old man, and he has been living on a street corner in New York City for 25 days with no food. He's drinking water and taking electrolytes and has become a beacon to the Cuban community. He says that it kind of started as a solo mission, but he's gathered community members around him who he's called his angels. So we're going to check in with Mr. Rocha tonight and see how he's doing. Again, 25 days. 25 days. And the last time I spoke with Mr. Rocha, he felt such a passion for what he's doing that he didn't have any intentions of stopping the hunger strike until his demands were met. And his demands are simple, you guys. He's asking for someone at the UN to take a meeting with him so that they can discuss the humanitarian crisis in Cuba. That is his main mission. And then once that meeting is set, then he has objectives that he wants to, there's objectives that he wants to meet. But right now, his main mission is to just get a meeting with someone at the UN. So let's go over to New York City. Mr. Rocha has moved locations from right in front of the UN building to a corner in Central Park because the General Assembly started today. So they asked him to relocate for the time being. We have with him someone that will interpret for us, another activist named Ingrid Rodriguez. So let's check in with them now.
Hello, I'll be translating for...
Hello, Mr. Rocha. How are you tonight?
¿Cómo estás esta noche?
Sigo en pie, sigo fuerte.
He's feeling good. He's still strong.
I said in our last report, you said something that stuck out to me. You said that your body is weak, but your spirit is strong.
Que tú mencionaste algo que le impresionó a ella, que tu cuerpo puede estar débil, pero tu espíritu sigue fuerte.
Sí, gracias a las personas que vienen aquí diariamente.
Yes, thank you to the people who have been coming here daily.
Gracias a Yotuel.
Thank you to Yotuel.
Que nos estuvo visitando antes de ayer.
That visited us before yesterday. He's a Cuban artist.
Y eso es lo que me da fuerzas para seguir.
And that's what's giving me strength to keep going.
To clarify for our audience is mainly English speaking.
Para clarificar para nuestra audiencia que es inglés.
I'm just letting the audience know, he was an artist who wrote an anthem that has been the anthem that's been used, that kind of has been the theme, the soundtrack for...
Está explicando de Yotuel que hizo una canción que hizo la canción que es ahora la canción que se está usando para este movimiento de Patria y Vida.
Sí,
Patria y Vida.
Lo impresionante de esto es que Yotuel hizo la canción en febrero.
The impacting thing about this is that Yotuel made the song in February.
Mm-hmm. La manifestación después de 63 años.
And the protest after 63 years
fue el 11 de julio.
Was July 11th.
Lo que pasa es que la juventud tomó eso como un himno.
The youth in Cuba took that as an anthem.
Para la libertad del pueblo de Cuba.
For the liberty of the people of Cuba.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I need to explain to our audience a little bit to put this into perspective. So for 63 years, Castro held a dictatorship over the country.
y lo de Castro y eso.
Let me have you, so when you translate, let me have you pull the phone away from you just a little bit. I think there might be a little bit of feedback.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. So for 63 years, Castro has, there's been a communist regime in place in Cuba. Around July 11th, conditions in Cuba have just continued to worsen. The healthcare system, the corruption, human rights, all of those things deteriorated to a point that the Cuban people rose up in protest for the first time in I think it was 30 years, but after being under very harsh communist leadership for 60 plus years. Keep in mind, these protesters were unarmed. I mean, they may have had rocks and stones at some point, but they're not like protesters that we have in America. They don't have gas masks. They don't have weaponry. They came in unarmed to protest the communist government. In response to that, the government responded with brutality. They arrested people. They physically assaulted them. I saw video of people being beaten, and it continued from there. The government's first response was to shut off the internet to the country and to disrupt lines of communication, so that the Cuban people are now isolated on an island just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. And they've been cut off to the outside world. They've not been given the opportunity to share their stories, to show the human rights violations that are being committed against them. And this is the main point. When I was following the protests down in Washington, D.C., or the demonstrations, the thousands and thousands of Cuban Americans and Cuban allies that showed up said the first thing they wanted was to have the internet restored and to have lines of communication restored on the island. Because you guys, without that, the government is free to brutalize the people and no one can see it. The people can cry out, there's human rights violations, but with no evidence, then why would the world get involved, right? So that's the first thing, is they need the internet, they need communication restored, and that's a weapon that the government uses against them continuously. The second thing that I think we need to understand is that they're not asking to be annexed by the United States. They're not asking that the United States go in and take them over or take them on as a charity case. So Andrew Davis, who in the comments said this isn't our problem, they're looking for a free handout, I'm going to ask you to back up a couple of paces there and understand that they're not looking for a handout. They're not looking for a donation. What they're looking for is the tools that they need to establish their own democracy, which, by the way, as Americans, we got. We did not gain our independence on our own. Without France's input, without Spain, even without the Dutch, we would not be living in a democracy right now. So let's put that clear, is that what they're looking for is not a handout. They are not looking for the embargo to be ended. They're not even asking that military go in and take the country for them. What they're asking for is communication. They're asking for a accountability for the human rights violations that are taking place over there. And other things that they're asking for is to be given the opportunity for American citizens to go then and give supplies directly to their Cuban citizens, or go and fight for them. So, Mr. Rocha, am I missing any? There's a lot more to it, but are those the basic? Is that still where we're at? Is that the people want the tools so that they can fight for their own liberty? Am I stating that correctly?
Dice que todavía ella le faltan muchos puntos, pero que si ella está hablando correctamente en base de lo que está hablando por arriba, en lo que ella está diciendo del mensaje de lo que quiere Cuba.
Sí, internet es muy importante.
Yes, the internet is very important.
Cuba lo que quiere, o sea, Cuba no, el pueblo cubano lo que quiere ahora mismo es libertad.
The Cuban people right now, what they're looking for is ultimately freedom.
Que puedan elegir a su propio presidente.
That, you know, they're able to pick their own president.
Porque ahora en Cuba no existe un presidente.
Because right now Cuba doesn't have a president.
Porque el dictador
the dictator,
Díaz-Canel no es presidente de los cubanos.
Díaz-Canel, is not a president of the Cuban people.
Ningún cubano ha votado en las urnas a Díaz-Canel.
None of the Cuban people voted for Díaz-Canel in Cuba.
Ahora, o sea, si el cubano es libre, el cubano buscará sus medicinas,
If the Cuban people are free, they can find their own medicine,
buscará su comida
they can find their own food,
y sus artículos de aseo personal.
and personal things that they need for their personal needs.
So we have
Necesitamos que la comunidad internacional,
We need the international community,
en este caso,
in this case,
la
or this cause.
Organización de Naciones Unidas,
In this case, the Organization of the United Nations,
más concretamente la Oficina de Derechos Humanos,
more specifically the Office of the Human Rights,
ayuden al pueblo cubano
to help the Cuban people
intervenir humanitariamente
intervene, to have a humanitarian intervention.
Let me pause
Por
there for
ejemplo.
1 second,
Dice, déjame pausarla ahí rapidito.
because we have people in our comments asking, like, what,
Tenemos gente en nuestro comentario que están
Like what?
preguntando.
and I think what he said there is exact, that he wants the United Nations to give humanitarian intervention. Is that correct?
Dice que había gente en el comentario preguntando que qué es lo que quieren, qué es lo que están buscando, pero ella dice que usted quiere intervención humanitaria para los cubanos. ¿Es correcto eso lo que estás diciendo?
intervención humanitaria con el envío de buques hospitales.
Humanitarian intervention with the added of como medicina,
Con buques hospitales, barcos hospitales.
with ships that also have hospitals, or being able to help the hospitals because they're collapsing in Cuba.
No pretendemos que manden comida ni que manden medicina.
We do not want them to send medicine or food,
Porque si se manda medicina y comida,
because if they send medicine and food,
el régimen cubano
the Cuban regime,
se la vende a su pueblo.
sells it to their own people.
O sea, las donaciones, el régimen cubano las vende para conseguir dinero.
So the donations that it gets sent to Cuba, the Cuban regime sells it to its people.
Para que ellos, o sea, para que los dictadores tengan más dinero en sus cuentas,
So that the dictators have more money in their accounts,
más mansiones,
more mansions,
más yates
more yachts,
y mucha mejor vida.
and better life for them.
Queremos libertad para que el cubano se busque su propia comida, su propia medicina.
We want liberty so that Cubans can, have the chance to find their own food and their own medicine.
So I think that's an important, for me personally, I think that's
Yo creo que eso es un punto.
something that we need to highlight, is that Cubans don't want
Cubanos no quieren.
temporary help. They want the ability to build a democracy for themselves and have their own freedom, so they can be on their own. Many Americans say, oh, they just want a handout. They just want us to, they want to be the 52nd or the 53rd state. And that's not what they want. They want the opportunity to have freedom and democracy within their country, correct?
Lo que dicen que las demandas de Cuba, pero eso no es lo que quieren Cuba. Ellos lo que quieren es democracia y libertad.
Democracia y libertad.
Democracy and liberty, correct.
Yeah.
La dictadura cubana
The dictator, the Cuban dictator, regime,
puede comprar comida y medicina a cualquier país del mundo.
They can buy medicine and food from any place around the world, from any country in the world.
El embargo
The embargo
no es sobre comida y medicina.
is not, does not affect food or medicine.
El pollo que aparece en Cuba
The chicken that you see in Cuba
es de Estados Unidos.
is from the United States.
O sea, el
So
embargo es económico.
the embargo is economic.
La dictadura cubana no compra comida ni medicinas para su pueblo.
The Cuban dictatorship does not buy food or medicine for their people.
El dinero que recauda
The money that they receive
de los médicos
from
que tienen esclavizados por el mundo.
From doctors that they use as cash cows around the world.
Y el dinero que reciben
and the money that they receive,
lo emplean todos en su propio beneficio.
They use it for their own benefit.
No lo utilizan para su pueblo.
They do not use it for their people.
So it sounds to me like we need not only things need to be handled differently when the aid is given to Cuba.
Necesitamos ver una diferencia en cuando la ayuda se dé a Cuba, que cómo llega a Cuba.
Bien,
Yes.
la primera ayuda que queremos es intervención humanitaria con envío de buques hospitales.
The first help that we want to receive is humanitarian intervention with hospital help as well.
And would that come from the UN or would that come from the United States directly?
¿Eso viene de las Naciones Unidas o viene de los Estados Unidos?
No, eso debe ser de Organización Naciones Unidas.
That should be coming from the Organization of the United Nations.
And that's why you've positioned yourself in front of the United Nations.
Ahí a frente de las Naciones Unidas.
Claro, o sea, una es la intervención humanitaria.
Yes, one is the humanitarian intervention.
Otra que tenemos un listado de desaparecidos y presos políticos.
And another one is that we have a list of political prisoners that have been arrested.
Que presionen al régimen cubano.
To put pressure onto the Cuban regime.
Para que nos den muestras de vida.
So that we have proof of life.
De esos desaparecidos y
of
presos
those
políticos.
That are disappeared and the political prisoners.
Porque tememos que a la mitad de ellos no lo volvamos a ver más.
Because we fear that at least half of them we will not see ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Y la tercera opción, o sea, la tercera petición que tenemos.
And the third petition that we have.
Es que expulsen a Cuba.
Is that they remove Cuba.
De la Organización de Naciones Unidas.
Of the Organization of the United Nations.
Porque viola 29 artículos.
Because they violate 29 articles.
De los 30
of 30
que componen la Declaración de Derechos Humanos.
That they have written on the Declaration of the Human Rights.
El Parlamento Europeo.
The European Parliament.
El 16 de septiembre.
The 17th of September.
Ya sacó una resolución.
Came out with a solution.
Condenando la violación de derechos humanos en Cuba.
Condemning the lack of human rights crisis or the lack of human rights that is happening in Cuba.
So this is the thing, that's the point of the United Nations, and they're ignoring what's happening in Cuba right now, which is shocking, honestly. They're not engaging in the blatant human rights violations that are happening there, which is a bit shocking, which I understand why Mr. Rocha had to go to such extreme measures, because no one is listening.
La alta comisión.
The High Commissioner, Michelle Bachelet.
Ahora sorda.
She is right now deaf,
muda,
mute,
y ciega.
And blind.
La comunidad internacional.
The international community.
Conoce la violación de los derechos humanos.
Is aware of the lack of human rights in Cuba.
La única que no lo ve.
The only one that doesn't see is Michelle Bachelet.
Su trabajo.
Her job.
Es velar por los derechos humanos.
Is to watch for the human rights.
Si ella no vela por los derechos humanos.
If she does not, protect human rights.
Que abandone.
That she should retire.
El alto comisionado.
From her position of High Commissioner.
Y dé paso a otra persona.
And let someone else
que se dedique
take over.
A lo que la gente quiere, o sea, al respeto de los derechos humanos.
That would be dedicated to what people are looking for. In other words, the human rights to be put in Cuba. Yo no veo aquí que ella. Yo creo que esto perdió.
Mr. Rocha, how are you feeling? How long do you think you can go?
¿Cómo tú te sientes que tú puedas ir con esta huelga de hambre?
Yo voy a continuar con la huelga de hambre.
I will continue with this hunger strike.
hasta que nos reciban
until they receive us
o hasta que mi cuerpo colapse.
or until my body collapses.
No sé si será mañana
I don't know if it will be
o
tomorrow
si será dentro de un mes.
or if it'll be in a month.
No tengo pensado abandonar la huelga.
I do not have plans to leave the hunger strike.
I spoke with another activist. I'll put her up here, Aurelia Martinez.
Yo hablé con Aurelia Martínez.
And I'm going to call with her in a moment, and she's laid out a plan for ways to provide you with support from across the United States. And it's very simple. It's just reaching out to people in power and asking them to hear your voice.
La embajadora de Estados Unidos para la ONU,
ambassador for the United Nations in the United States,
Linda Thomas Greenfield, ha recibido más de 300 mensajes.
Has received more than 300 messages.
Okay.
Y también está sorda, muda y ciega.
And she is also blind, mute, and deaf.
Necesitamos una respuesta a nuestras peticiones.
We need a reply to our petitions.
Lo único que estamos pidiendo
The only
es
thing that we are asking
que
for
nos
is
reciban en una reunión.
to have a meeting with us, to receive us for a meeting or to set up a meeting.
No estamos pidiendo un apartamento en Manhattan,
We are not asking for an apartment in Manhattan
ni un carro del año.
or a car of the year.
Simplemente una reunión.
Simply a meeting.
No es tan difícil.
It is not that difficult.
And it's not too much to ask.
Y no es mucho para pedir.
No, especially when that's their job.
Especialmente cuando es su trabajo.
Claro.
Yes.
Please reassure Mr. Rocha, we will do our part to give the information to our audience.
Por favor, sépate que vamos a
So
hacer
that they
lo que podemos para darle la información a nuestra
put pressure also on the people that need to hear your voice.
presión a la gente que deben de oír.
Necesitamos seguir haciendo mucho ruido.
We need to keep making noise.
Hay un pueblo que nos necesita.
There is a people that need us.
Esto no se trata de republicanos ni de demócratas.
This is no longer about Republican or Democrat.
No se trata de personas de color
This is not
o personas blancas.
This is not about skin color.
Esto se trata de personas
This is about people
ayudando a personas.
helping people.
Ayudar a un pueblo que está a 90 millas de los Estados Unidos
To help a people that are 90 miles away from the United States
y se está cometiendo un auténtico genocidio.
and is happening a real life genocide.
Parece mentira que estemos tan cerca
It almost seems fake that we are so close
y no estemos ayudando a nuestros hermanos cubanos.
and we are not helping our Cuban brothers and sisters.
I appreciate those words, Mr. Rocha. We will continue checking in with you to see how you're doing. And I wanted to say that Mr. Rocha is not standing out there alone. He has gathered a community around him of people that stay with him day and night to help provide him with companionship and protection. And I've heard him refer to them as his angels. So his sacrifice is not in vain. It has been inspirational to people domestically and internationally. And I applaud you for doing what you feel is right for you and your people.
Y que te agradece mucho lo que estás haciendo por la gente.
Gracias a vosotros,
Thanks to
a
you,
las
to you
televisiones
all,
y a la
the
prensa escrita,
media, the newspaper,
porque sin vosotros no podríamos llegar a todos los sitios.
because without you guys, we would not be able to get to all the places that we need to.
Yo siempre he dicho que esto no es cuestión de una sola persona.
I've always said that this is not something that only one person can do. This is not a cause for one person.
Entre todos tenemos que lograr salvar a todo un pueblo.
With all of us, with all our help, we can achieve saving a people.
La vida de los cubanos
The life of
también
Cubans,
importa.
the life of Cubans also matters.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for being an example that One
Gracias.
person can make a difference.
Una persona puede hacer una diferencia.
Gracias a vosotros, gracias.
Thank you. Thank
Gracias.
you.
Thank you, Nacho. There we go. Let me take that off there. You guys, the thing is, CJTV is all about elevating voices. And I see this gentleman out there who is 61 years old, 61. And he felt so impassioned by this thing and so frustrated and so helpless that he said to himself, what can I do? And then he didn't just sit and stew in it. He said, what can I do? And then he went and did it. He traveled all the way up from Florida, found a spot in front of the UN because he wanted them to hear his voice. And, you know, going on a hunger strike isn't for everyone, obviously, but he has said that he's willing to die for this cause. So if I can take a little bit of whatever influence we have to elevate his voice and let him speak his truth, that is the whole reason we're doing this. It's the whole reason that CJTV exists, because we want the opportunity to elevate voices. We want to tell the stories that people aren't hearing. And I think that tonight you heard a story that is not being, it's not getting its proper due. So for those of you who are commenting, so much support for Mr. Rocha. I appreciate that. I'm sure he appreciates it too. We're going to give a call into one of his angels. It was a woman that he met in the street out there who he didn't know. She was a stranger and she heard about what he was doing. I mean, Mr. Rocha he doesn't have a Facebook page. He doesn't have an Instagram. He just is a man who has passion and thought to himself, he didn't have anything. Like, he made signs and he went to protests, and then he went home and thought, no one is listening to me. What can I do? What do I have at my disposal? Because he doesn't have a social media presence. He doesn't have a large influence. I just think it's so inspiring that what he said to himself is, I can make a physical sacrifice. That's the most I have to add. And I have a voice and I have passion. And by making that physical sacrifice, people started listening. We are at day 25. No one listened at day 3, and no one listened at day 7, and maybe day 10, people started perking up. But by about day 20 and day 21, you see the name Nacho Rocha all over, not just in America. His name is now heard all across all across the United States and all across the world for people that are looking for examples and I don't know, I'm trying to find the right word, banners, I suppose, something they can stand behind because they're frustrated and there are people dying and suffering incredible human atrocities, which I know people will say that happens everywhere. It happens in the United States. It happens all over. We can't help everybody, but we can listen to their stories, right? There's enough compassion to go around. So I'm going to call up, her name is Aurelia, and she has come up with a way for people to contribute without costing any money, without costing much of anything. Hi, Aurelia, how are you? This is Shama Bartlett on CJTV. You're live with us.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I was just telling our audience here, I'm going to pull up your Facebook page.
Okay.
So Aurelia is a New York resident, a New York native. She heard about Mr. Rocha's story, and she went down to see him on the street corner and has been there every day since. She, let me kick him out. Let me fix this really quick. She's been down there every day since. She's actually organized. So Mr. Rocha has not been smooth sailing all the time down there. There have been groups that have come down that are pro-communism that have come down and ripped his flags down. They've harassed him. And so Aurelia and others have come together and they provide him with protection so he can sleep at night. They provide him with hydration. They wash his clothes for him. He's not left his position in 25 days. Now, I went camping for about 3 days And it was not even real life camp. Like we were in cabins. Let me just be clear. I felt like we were roughing it because we had to walk to a bathroom that wasn't it. We didn't have running water in our cabins. It was 3 days. And by the time we got home, I was so ready for a shower. I was ready to be like living on the grid. I'm not 61, but Mr. Rocha is 60. And I had plenty of food, by the way. I've not missed a whole lot of meals in my time. But Mr. Rocha, 25 days, no food, living on a street corner in New York. And by the way, my friends, it has not been sunny skies every day. We've had some nice rain here on the East Coast, some really nice windy days. So he's not been able to be alone out there. He started off alone, but a community of people have slowly gathered around him, and those numbers continue to increase as people are starting to take notice. His sacrifice has not been in vain. And one person is Miss Aurelia. Am I saying your name correctly?
You are, yes.
Perfect. We were speaking the other day, and she said that they're trying to mobilize in a way that's more organized. So they're choosing a target, not a target, but a how would you call it? Like a person in position of influence?
Yes. Yeah, target gives it a negative connotation, although we're hoping that that we are targeting them, unfortunately. That it's not negative, though. It's we're choosing someone who could potentially have the following or the voice or the influence, and we are all collectively calling and emailing that person each day in order to get them to publicly on their social media platforms have whatever aides or interns they have reach out as well to the U.S. ambassador at the United Nations, which Mr. Rocha referred to a moment ago. I was watching the stream.
So
her
I'm
name
pulled
is
up.
Linda Thomas Greenfield. So we're having every morning we will put up. So on Friday we put up Marco Rubio and everybody in our team here locally in Miami. Everyone that we have a couple people on our group that are in Cuba that are trying to help from within the island.
Let me explain to them what I have on the screen right now. Miss Aurelia started a Facebook page called SOS Cuba NYC. She just started this page this morning, and the purpose of the page is to share information not only on Mr. Rocha's story, but to provide a place for people to go. Let me put my phone down there. To see who, so every day they're choosing a person that's in an influential position, like Mark Rubio, and it looks like this Senator Rick Scott. So they're choosing a person, and then they're inviting like as many people as they can to all email, phone call, Instagram, instant message, whatever it is, that particular person in that day. And those numbers, as those numbers get larger, it'll be much harder for those people to ignore. When you're one voice, people can turn away. When you're 800 voices, it's much, much harder to pretend that you're deaf. So if you go to SOS Cuba NYC on Facebook, if you like and follow the page, you can go every day, and at the top of the page, she'll pin a post with contact information for whoever the non-violent, the
chosen person.
That's what we'll call it, the chosen person.
That sounds nicer, right?
Yeah, we're not going to call it the target. But so today was Rick Scott, a senator out of Tallahassee. Now, who are choosing the chosen ones? Who's making that choice?
Nacho, myself, we are open to suggestions. This is, as you just said, I just started this morning, this Facebook page. There wasn't a lot of planning. I think that, the same way Nacho decided to do the hunger strike, it was just out of a moment of desperation and not, getting tired of waving the flag around.
But are you,
so how are
you choosing them? Is it because of their political influence, or because they're sympathetic to the Cuban cause?
Well, political influence. So it's easy to get those who are sympathetic to the cause to agree with us. So we also have to choose people who may not be sympathetic to the cause. Right now, we started with Marco Rubio, Senator Scott. Of course, we're going to also choose the governor from Florida, who we also believe will be sympathetic to the cause. But then we want to reach out to the ones in New York who may not be as sympathetic, but this is happening in New York. There is a person prepared to die in their city, in their state, to get help for the Cuban people. So we're also going to reach out to them in sort of order. We're kind of starting with Florida, and then anyone who might be open to helping, who might be kind of in the middle, who we might be able to sway. So we're definitely open to suggestions, and we can choose those people as well. Of course, our friend Linda Thomas Greenfield is always a person of choice, but we don't want to bombard people. We don't want to bombard people with, call this person and this person and this person. So that's why we're choosing one person a day for as long as Nacho can withstand. I don't know how much longer he can take, but...
Are you concerned about his health? I know that you've become very close to him.
I absolutely am, yes.
Yeah. I pulled up.
If you look at pictures of him from a month ago and pictures of him, like we were FaceTiming earlier this morning, and I took a screenshot of his face, and I'm like, I get more and more concerned. I've noticed that he's developing a tick over his right eye that he did not have before. Yes, I am concerned, but he continues to convince me. We thought we had agreed that Thursday would be his last day, and when I got there, I think he had a speech ready to convince me as to why Thursday was not going to be his last day.
He practiced.
So then we had to move him from the UN over to Central Park, where we have him now, and we live streamed the entire way to make sure that it was clear that even en route there was no, he wanted to make sure that he wanted to walk. It was too far to walk. We had a wheelchair for him, but it was too far for his supporters to walk him. So we did transport him in a car, but he insisted on a video being taken the entire way to make sure that everyone was clear that he was not eating.
One of our viewers, Jean Kramer, put the comment out there. She said, "Isn't there someone in the UN to talk to?" And that person is...
We have reached out to a person who came out to speak to him. There was a human rights officer. I kind of don't want to put out his name as one of the chosen because he seemed sympathetic. He came out looking for Nacho. So we spoke to him. He asked for us to email him the petition, which had those 3 points that Mr. Rocha outlined to you a moment ago.
Well, you also mentioned Linda Greenfield, and she is the human rights ambassador.
She is the U.S. ambassador at the United Nations, right? So she's the person that has the countries that are the participating countries each have a representative. Our representative, the U.S.'s representative, is Linda Thomas Greenfield. However, Cuba also has a seat at that table, which they shouldn't, because as Mr. Rich just mentioned, they violate 29 of the 30 articles of the Declaration of Human Rights. So they should not have a vote in human rights at the High Commission of Human Rights, but they do. But if we can get Linda Thomas Greenfield to listen to the petition, she could present it to the other member states. So that's why she's always a target of choice at this point. Yeah, I'm okay using the word target with her.
Well, it's her job. I mean, that's the hard thing, is that we've discussed with Mr. Rocha, it is her job to represent the United States when it comes to human rights on the UN's, with the United Nations. It is her job to represent the American people. And if she is ignoring American citizens saying, hey, we want this, she's not doing her job.
We were told that the dictator who was in Mexico would be here on Thursday at the United Nations. I have not confirmed that yet because they have everything closed off. So there's no access to the United Nations right now. It's very difficult to get near there, even to protest. But we have organized. It hasn't been easy, but slowly we've been organizing. We created this Facebook page. I have a set schedule with 4 shifts to cover the 24 hours with 2 people at every shift. Making sure there are males at night, because those who came to threaten him to say long live the revolution and tear up our flags were men. We're trying to organize ourselves as much as we can in order to protect him for as long as he's wanting to do this, but he keeps insisting that it's either when his body collapses or they receive him. So the best way that people can help, I think, is by reaching out to these people every day, whoever the chosen one is. If you want to send a message through that page, I'll get it myself. And if you think that there's someone that we should be reaching out to that we're missing, this wasn't, something organized. He did it. We saw him doing it. He was doing it for Cuba and the New York, New Jersey Cubans.
And you said, let's get on board with that.
We had to step up and protect him protect him and help him and take care of him and make sure that, this man has 2 children, that I won't let him die doing this. And I tell him, as long as I see that you're okay, when I feel that you're not, I'm going to end this for you. And so that's why he tries to convince me that he's okay. He's okay.
Yeah.
It came out on there have been a couple other news channels after you.
I saw that.
That have decided to come and see him, which is great because hopefully it will get out.
And I saw that Mark Rubio tweeted, and he was interviewed on a national news source on NBC. It's starting to get some traction. I think that he's now starting to, like I said, at day 20, day 3, day 7, day 10, but now at day 25, like you said, if someone starves to death in protest on American soil, an American citizen in front of the UN building, begging just to be heard, to have their voice heard, I don't want him to be martyred that way. I don't want anyone to be martyred that way. But as it progresses, they can't pretend to be deaf as it gains traction. Well, really, thank you so much for.
Thank you, because we hadn't gotten any coverage before you. He thanked you, but I personally also want to thank you because yes, NBC came and Telemundo came, but they all came after you. You were the first one to show and express any interest in this, any interest in Nacho, and he is a human being and he is an American citizen, and he's, like you said, just asking to be heard. So
thank you so much,
Aurelia. Thank you as well.
You're welcome. Thank you, and thank you for all that you're doing. And I keep you in our prayers and take good care of him. I know
we will.
It's hard because you want to promote the cause, but then I've seen it with my brother. He's a baller. Like when he's out in the field, he's covered a lot of protests and a lot of dangerous stuff. And I'll be running things on the back end and I'll see him run towards the danger. And the journalistic part of me is like, go get the story. But the sister part of me is like, get out of there. Like, don't jeopardize yourself for this thing. I'm sure you're feeling the same way.
I had never heard the name Nacho Rocha a month and a half ago. And now I feel like he's my, I'm younger than him, but I feel like he's my son and I have to protect him. I have to take care of him. He's an incredible human being doing something that I guess I had maybe lost faith that people in general cared. And he has renewed my faith that there are people out there that do care about human rights, about humans. And so it's difficult. Yes, it is difficult to balance. Am I home creating the Facebook page, or am I there making sure he's still drinking? Am I home washing his clothes, or am I there? So that's why, fortunately, there are enough people that we can sort of split it. And then I still go every day to see him twice a day. But
well, really, you just hit the nail on the head there. It's that they're reaffirming for you that there are people that care. There are people that stand up for what they believe in. And I love that statement that you were losing hope, but he gave it back to you again.
I was. And then this man showed up from Florida that I didn't even know, who said, I'm going to starve myself until I die because Cuban people are dying and this isn't fair. And it just, that's the best way I can say it, is that he renewed my faith in people, because I was standing there with my flag as well, protesting. I've been protesting since July 11th, and now I find myself, well, I'm not leaving Nacho alone. I don't care if the dictator is going to be at the UN. He's not going to hear me. I'm not going to leave this one human who's fighting for 11 million Cubans
to dance around in front of someone else.
A dictator that I know is not going to pay attention to me. But there are people out there who still care, and Nacho is definitely one of them.
I agree with you on that, and I think you are as well. All right. Thank you so much, Aurelia. Thank you for talking with us, and we'll continue to follow his story and check in with him and see how he's doing. And I really hope that the ending to this story is that he gets in front of the people who will hear his voice.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Yeah. So this is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not Cuban, and I don't have a dog in the fight, as they say, but I'm a human being, and our platform, our objective is to elevate voices. And so right now, if I have the opportunity to elevate Nacho Rocha's voice and the voice of all of the people that he represents, I'm going to do it. We're going to do it. Because it's exactly what she said. You lose your faith in people sometimes. And I can tell you that after following protests and the election and all of the nastiness involved in that, personally, CJ and I have both talked about it. It's hard not to lose your faith in people. It's hard not to see people stand up and do things that are positive for things they believe in. When was the last time you stood up for something that you were passionate about in an absence of anger? When was the last time you were able to do that? It's a beacon of light to me that people can be passionate without being angry. They can be impactful without being violent. And that is a message that we need to continue putting out there, because this channel has been a wonderful blessing and has been very informative, but it's also showcased the narrative that to get views, to get an audience, you need violence. And that's not the message. That's not going to be the final word on it, because we've seen protest in America, and it's violence begets violence begets violence. And so if this man can go on a street corner and say, all I have to give to this cause is my life, and I will give it, then that is a voice that we need to elevate. So you don't have to take Cuba on as a cause, but what you can do is say, this man here deserves to be heard, because he's fighting the good fight with passion and with integrity and with dignity. And he has become a symbol of hope for people, that you can fight with passion and with grace and with dignity. And the easiest way for you to do that, I'll say again, is to go to SOS Cuba NYC. At the top of their page every day, they're going to post their, what you call it, their chosen, not the targets. We're not going to say targets. We're going to say their chosen people. And if you're a lawmaker and one day you open up your inbox and you have 800 emails all requesting the same thing, take a meeting with Nacho Rocha, let him speak to the UN, or, that's really the bottom line. His life may be forfeit for this cause. If all we can do is help his voice be heard by the people that need to hear it, it's such a small thing that you can do that could be impactful. And I'm not asking you to take on Cuba again. I'm not trying to push any sort of agenda or narrative, except to say, let's elevate humanity. And if you can find some little way to do it, do it. If this is something that you can do that will help you elevate humanity and let someone's voice be heard, then do that. And if you don't do that, that's fine. But pick something, people. Let's pick something, because this idea that the only way to get things done is through violence has got to go. It's got to go. It's this issue and that issue and that issue and that issue, and it's not stopping. And CJ said something to me along months and months ago that has completely stuck with me. He said that protests grow on each other, and they learn from one another, and they're adaptive. So they saw Chop Chaz, and that's when everything began. He went out there with his camera to document what was happening and wanted to elevate voices. He wanted to hear people's stories. Why are you out here? What are you doing? What do you hope to accomplish? And, that kind of grew and grew and grew until it turned into a situation that was violent and was handled in a way that was very visual and not peaceful. And then that evolved into the Portland protests, and it continued on and on. And from everyone, the people went, hey, when you light a car on fire, people pay attention. So at the next one, we're going to light a bunch of cars on fire. And if we rip down light posts, we get a response. So we're going to do that, but even more. And it goes up a notch and up a notch and up a notch, right? You all saw it. I mean, it's gotten to the point when we were in DC, there was no rally, there was no protest without knives and guns. And they wanted it, their protesting isn't protesting anymore. It's fighting. It's just going out with violence. This is driving me nuts. So let's take the opportunity to elevate those voices that are speaking in passion and in dignity. And that's what I feel we're getting from Mr. Nacho Rocha. So I'm going to sign off tonight. Thank you, Cindy. She says that she agrees that violence is not the answer. I know it all sounds very kumbaya, but there's a man on a street corner tonight, you know, feeling very passionate about something and willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish his goals. And he is doing nothing but inspiring other people. He's not ripping them down. He's not shouting his message in a violent, derogatory way. He's just standing in his personal truth, in grace and dignity, and doing what needs to be done. And I applaud that. Someone had asked where CJ is, and I shared this last night. He is definitely, this is all still very CJ TV. He is the big kumbaya. I mean, the big, what is it? Anyway, it's still CJ TV. Absolutely. He is working a lot right now, and he is recovering from illness. He's well, but he is also working quite a bit right now and trying to figure out his scheduling and his agenda. So since I'm on the East Coast and he's shoved me in front of the camera enough times that I'm at least willing to be here. Not in great comfort, but I'll hold down the fort for the time being. And that's where we're at. So yeah, CJ is still around, and he will be back in front of you with his big old head and his great big personality as soon as he possibly can. So we look forward to having him back also. I was just looking at a couple of comments here. So again, to all of you, I say have a great week. Enjoy your Mondays, and go out there and be passionate about something with a lot of grace and dignity if you possibly can.